You're welcome.
So welcome everybody to our November 18th meeting. It's finally good to be back in person, even though we don't have everyone, but we do have a quorum, so that's a good thing. So it looks like we do have 4 people, and let's get the meeting going. Vote on our minutes from our last 2 meetings, which was August, and then we had a quick meeting on the 25th.
Mhm.
Anybody have any problems with the minutes at all? Any comments?
Good,
Jimmy's are always thorough.
Yep.
yes.
I try.
All right, so we kind of approve those.
Aye.
So all in favor?
Do we have a motion?
I have a
We have a
motion.
to approve the minutes.
Approve the minutes.
Seconded. All in favor? All right.
Oh, yeah, we'll just go with that.
Hi, Emily. Thank you for voting. Can you hear us okay?
I hear you. You're a little muffled because of the masks, but it's fine.
Okay.
Let's speak louder.
Try to speak louder. So we also need to approve the meeting agenda for tonight. So if I have a motion for that, great.
I approve the agenda.
And approve the agenda for this evening.
Could there be discussion?
There can be discussion.
Do we want to acknowledge any changes in membership at this meeting for the minutes?
So you mean that Rachel has stepped down?
Yeah.
Yep, we can, just add that in as a note.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then we gotta move on new chairmanship. Is that on the agenda?
That is on the agenda. Would you like a copy of the agenda?
Yes, please.
And then maybe next agenda, because tonight's tight, but maybe next agenda, Chuck and I can talk about the Conservation Commission conference.
Sure.
Yeah.
That would be great.
And we should update from
That's
the ICLEI GP cog event too. Report, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
They're both pretty cool.
Okay.
Are you not feeling well?
Oh, I'm just still out of it. Still having struggling.
Yeah.
You have the fog, the COVID
I've got
fog.
the fog and now I have high and irregular heartbeat issues.
Oh,
So I've got to go through a slew of tests this week.
Oh.
Trying to figure that out and go from there. So
Did you have a pre-existing heart issue?
Mm.
perfectly healthy.
all right. So Chuck moved to approve the agenda. Pete, I think, did you second? And
Second.
Randy just noted that she'd like to acknowledge Rachel's resignation from the commission. We have a vote.
So we have to vote to approve the agenda. Everybody
Aye.
in favor?
Aye.
Right. And, okay, new business. Our first action item on our new business is to elect a chair and recording clerk, secretary. So Jamie, does that mean that you would not be taking minutes anymore?
No, I think it was more, I mean, we technically have a recording clerk in our sustainability committee also, but I still am the one doing the minutes. Someone just kind of does a backup maybe, and will take minutes, but really,
And I just have an administrative question that I'm even not sure of, that I probably should know. Can we elect officers with just barely a quorum?
yes,
Okay.
I can do any business.
Okay.
We're just barely a quorum.
Should we center this so she can hear Pete better?
I'm not sure if it will, I'll move it down as far as I can.
Is that a problem?
I can hear fine.
Oh, hold on, but now I just messed something up.
That. Can't see anybody.
All right, hold on.
Emily, can you still see us?
No.
No, but I can hear you. There we go. I gotcha.
The owl came unplugged.
Oh.
I think we're good now.
The owl does not work unless plugged in.
Right.
Owl
Owl requires electricity. So we don't necessarily have roles defined for recording clerk. I was talking with Tody Justice, our town clerk today, And she was sharing that she used to staff all of our committee meetings, and it got to the point where all she was doing was committee meeting minutes. So she asked that recording clerks be established, so that kind of has become part of the committee makeup.
Because the reason I asked is, or the reason we wanted to discuss the clerk is basically before you arrived, we did have a clerk
Mhm.
or secretary. Because, I mean, I
Was it a
guess
staff
I take that
person?
back. Jay took, no, it was not a staff person. It was a commission member. And I have to say, ever since staff took over recording minutes, and this isn't, this isn't saying anything bad about commission members, but the minutes have been very good.
That's the danger of doing a good job.
A great leap forward.
So I honestly would rather see like a vice chair instead of a recording clerk, because I just feel like, I think
Yeah.
it's the practice of other groups where the recording clerk stands in for the chair if the chair's not able to be there. And so while we'll get to the discussion of that we're gonna have to update our charge if we decide to move forward with consolidating with PMAC,
Yeah,
we could update that to a vice chair instead of a recording clerk.
okay.
And
We used to have a vice chair. We used to have a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary.
And I have noticed, because I have been looking at our charge, that some of the common components of committees are lacking in the commission's charge. Like, it doesn't even say that we need to have a chair. So I think it's just been practice. And so, and if you're saying that we've always had a chair in the past, then, or a vice chair in the past, then perhaps we just
But
do.
that was going back, were you here when Ivor was here?
No.
Okay, that goes back probably 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
I mean, you overlapped with Ivor, right? That was probably 4 years ago.
Yeah, I don't remember being a vice chair.
So we had a vice chair then, and I remember Anton was our secretary
Mhm.
many years ago. So that was before you even.
Oh, Anton.
Oh, I was gonna say
know
Anton was here when I was
okay.
Yeah, I
here.
know Anton.
So how does the group wish to move forward with?
It doesn't really matter, it's just a word, right?
Well, I like the idea of a vice chair.
Instead of
Yeah.
recording clerk?
And
I would
yeah,
prefer
think
that too.
that's fair.
Emily?
I agree. I like the vice chair.
Okay, so that's noted that we're making that change. And I guess, so we're open for nominations for officer elections. Officially have to do nominations in seconds, don't we?
And I'll jump at once.
I would like to nominate someone else as chair.
Pete nominates anyone else.
I nominate Randy as
I
chair.
nominate Randy as chair.
Oh,
To it.
I second.
I agree.
oh. So do I.
Yay! You can
Done.
object and have discussion, but we could also nominate somebody who's not here.
Ooh,
Oh, that's a cheap shot, maybe.
voluntold,
It is a
is
cheap
what they
shot.
call it.
Although it does sound like this is unanimous.
We have, I mean, I guess our discussion is right now, so.
Second.
Do you have any stipulations with it, Randy?
Oh,
Yeah,
stipulation.
do you require pastries brought to the meeting or?
I hope you know you're signing up for those pastries. If that's a requirement.
No, it's part of the job, yeah.
Right. Stipulations. We have to have an address tonight of the former chair
Oh,
after the election.
You can do that at the end,
Once the camera's turned off.
yes. All right, so we have an official vote that.
We have to
all in
vote.
favor, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Any
you.
other
Yeah.
For your
nominations?
competence.
Any other nominations? Hearing none. All those in favor? Oh, you're still the chair, go ahead.
Yeah, but we just did the vote.
Oh, I
Oh,
did. Okay.
after this meeting. At the end.
Now you're the
Yes.
chair, right?
No, it's after this
No.
meeting. It doesn't, it's not immediate, I don't think.
No,
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
right.
So,
And does anyone want to nominate a vice chair?
um,
We have two people absent. Perhaps we should wait till they're here.
Unless somebody wants to self-nominate.
No one's really excited about being a vice chair.
Emily,
so are you
I would
nominating
be your vice.
we're
I
looking
will
for
do
a
that.
vice chair.
I kind of like the idea of filling the vice chair when we kind of have more people
Okay.
Yeah,
on.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay.
that
Who
sounds
are we
good.
missing?
Say that again?
Who is missing now that Rachel stepped down? Oh, Susan
Oh,
and Noah. Okay, perfect.
Gallivanting in the Galapagos.
Right. I forgot.
A little bit of both, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I would be gallivanting in the Galapagos if I were down there.
It's a great phrase.
I just came up with it tonight, so.
No, coining terms.
Gallantly?
Gallantly.
Gallantly gallivanting in the Galapagos.
We're getting dumb again.
Okay.
Good thing we're recording this meeting.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay, awesome. Well, congratulations, Randy.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you for your comments.
So
Fools.
we are actually right on time,
Look at that.
so I can try dawdling for a little bit.
Okay.
Old business. For the Pine Tree Amendment, Chuck forwarded a awesome,
Mm,
I think, personally, not draft, but something that's been adopted by Camp.
Camden,
Right.
yep.
It is one
Yep.
page.
Very-
It is like 6 statements or
Yeah.
7 statements.
Yeah.
And it took, awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm sure.
It took everything that we were kind of like, well, what does this actually mean? What is it? Why is it so long? And distilled it to what we discussed last time, which was getting it simple, getting it down to the key points of what we're trying to get across with this thing.
Yeah.
I think it's a great example. And then,
Emily, would it be helpful for you if I share my screen with the Camden resolution or?
I have it right here. We're good.
And that's what I just wanted to share, everyone, my thoughts on it, and then open it up for discussion. If Chuck, you want to have anything you want to add in terms of updates as it relates to PTA or?
Well,
anything else?
I agree that this is a good example of what we could do right here. We might want to fine tune it a little bit. There might be something that we want to do to make it more Scarborough relevant, but I don't know exactly. As I said before, if we wanted to say something about the marsh and its particular importance to us,
Yeah.
That's a possibility.
Yeah, it could be a simple statement like the right to a clean and healthy environment, comma, including the Scarborough Marsh ecosystem, comma, or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah, or
Because-
our
It does make it,
essential, yeah,
it does make it unique to
Right.
Scarborough.
Right.
Because that is our greatest
right,
environmental asset, at least in my
Right.
mind.
right.
Our beaches are nice, but it's the marsh that,
And
Well,
it's-
I feel like we have
how
some
about
statement in
how
the,
about the marsh and its watershed?
well, I feel like we have some statement in the comprehensive plan to
we
that.
do, there's a lot of statements in the comprehensive. plan.
About the marsh specifically, yeah.
Hopefully we'll follow all those statements up with some better protections for the marsh. That would be
Yeah.
very good.
Did you all see the email I sent about the Green Amendment in Montana?
Yes.
Yes, about the youth initiative.
Yeah. There's two youth initiatives there. One is an old initiative, 10 years old, is a federal initiative brought by Juliana versus the US. And there were 20 youth plaintiffs suing the federal government for not protecting their constitutional rights to, healthy environment and, stable future and all that. And that is moving forward after 10 years to trial in Montana. And ironically, the same state is lawyers are bringing a suit in behalf of youth again against the state of Montana for not protecting their youthful interests, their environmental interests from the problems wrought by climate change. And in particular, not protecting them from the problems wrought by the fossil fuel industry. And Montana is, unbeknownst to most people, is a huge fossil fuel state. It's the biggest coal producer in the country. And more Montana coal is burned in power plants in the United States than from anywhere. So that's a really big deal. And that the Green Amendment language in Montana is specifically used in this suit. And that is going to trial. So that's the most perfect example I could think of for such an amendment.
So question, beyond the case study that's occurring right now with what's going on with Montana.
Yeah.
How does this translate to our language for the resolution? Does it at all, or is this just?
I don't know, the language from Montana, if we were to boot up that article that I sent around, it displays the phrases that were used, the clauses that were used from the Green Amendment to bring the case. So
I don't see an article, I just see the.
I attached an article initially. No, I guess you didn't get it, huh?
I'm looking at your email about that.
Okay.
So are you looking to,
Maybe I referenced the article. It's the Mountain State Law, something or other.
Western Environmental Law Center.
Yeah, Western Environmental Law Center.
Oh, you just say, please go to.
I referenced
see
the
it.
article, and it's all in there. If somebody wants to
are you
go there.
looking to strengthen the
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
resolution?
No, I'm not looking to.
Oh.
I'm just stating an example.
That's-
You know,
yeah.
we're still dealing with whether or not we're going to recommend this for the town council, and I'm making the strongest case possible right now.
Oh, I see.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Well, I mean, I agree, this is a really strong resolution. The fact that it's, we have good wording, that it's been passed and adopted in Camden. And, we have language about Scarborough Marsh, we can pull straight from the comprehensive plan. I think it makes sense for us to move forward with this.
Is that a motion?
Oh, yes. I move to write a resolution
For the town of Scarborough,
for the town of Scarborough supporting passage of the Pine Tree Amendment.
similar to what Camden put together,
Yes,
but
similar to
tailored
Camden.
for Scarborough.
So I think that the motion needs to be that we're going to recommend that the town council
Yeah.
Okay,
So
pass a
To
resolution.
the result.
question.
but then we
actually
have
you
to
of
deliver them a
process.
draft, right?
Yeah, we have to give them an actual draft.
Yeah, so I think
Okay.
the motion is that we're going to recommend, and then we can recommend to council, and then we can talk about how we're gonna go about making that recommendation, which would include
Okay, okay,
drafting the resolution and an accompanying memo, and probably having a representative from the Conservation Commission attend that council meeting when it's being discussed to kind of present the issue and answer questions.
okay.
And I see Brunswick basically has a lot of the same, but there's the Brunswick one is attached as the example in our packet. It's pretty much, looks very similar, at least just eyeing it. To the Camden one. It's interesting that nobody really tailored it specifically to like their communities. I'm wondering if that strengthens it. I think it strengthens it personally to tailor it to our community by adding a statement or two
You
about
do.
our natural resources.
Would you
including the marsh,
add
the beaches, the
Marsh and beaches?
clam flats, all that stuff. I think it makes sense.
Okay, so that like in one paragraph or one sentence, marshes,
It'll be
beaches,
in
clam
that
flats.
first statement, whereas, and then it we can figure out exactly where it goes, or if it's even like an EG comma, or if it's in parentheses, or if it's in the statement with a comma. The healthy environment, comma, including da, 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 da. There's simple ways to do it. It just takes some wordsmithing.
It's right here. It's already done. The Scarborough, whereas the Scarborough Marsh is central to the town's identity, creating special awareness by our residents of the importance of all the town's natural resources, including our beaches, dunes, rivers, open spaces, farmlands, and other elements that
Love it,
comprise our
Randy.
unique
Love it.
ecosystem.
Love it. That's,
And we can
pulled
even
right
say,
from the
whereas the comprehensive plan,
Yeah,
Right,
oh, so it could be
yeah,
the second statement in this,
Yeah.
where we use the same whereas in the first statement.
Yeah.
The second statement is whereas, boom, the comprehensive, Scarborough's comprehensive plan finds, and then
Yeah.
it's dot, dot, dot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
perfect.
What page is that statement on?
16,
Okay. Paragraph,
it's the very first vision statement.
awesome, love it.
Yeah,
And we can even reference it, Scarborough's, Scarborough Comprehensive Plan Vision Statement, number 1, or whatever it is.
yeah.
And that tailors it to Scarborough.
By the way, there's a phrase in there, a clause in there that I didn't read out loud, which is not central to the resolution, which says, therefore, future land use will follow a pattern of development that is sensitive to beaches, dunes, rivers. Yeah.
So do we have to add that little sick thing in there? We can strike that?
Oh,
I don't think so.
Okay, because we can basically tailor our own language, but if
Right.
we're referencing a statement from
mhm.
comprehensive plan, we do have to add that little thing. So we're quoting the comprehensive plan, we have to do that. If we're, what's the other word, not quoting, but
Referencing.
if we're referencing the comprehensive plan.
You have to
We can
footnote
change
it,
whatever language we want.
you have to footnote it in the document,
In the resolution.
in the resolution, yeah.
I don't know how that goes.
I don't know if you have to.
I don't
Do we
think
have a
do,
second on the motion?
I second that emotion.
Yeah. All in favor? I think
All
we
in
have,
favor.
I think this is great. I think it's great.
It's passed?
Well,
this is-
and then now we talk about how.
And now we'll talk about how we go about
Right.
this. So my recommendation would be that for the next meeting, I will update the resolution and pull together a draft memo for everyone to review and approve at the next meeting. And we can work on getting this probably on a council agenda in early January, given that.
Beautiful. That would be perfect, because that's when it's gonna go to the legislature. So for,
Can,
Yes.
questions? Do we want to bring John in to this? Yeah.
Yep, he
Would
should be.
would he be our advocate, lead advocate?
Yeah, and so I think typically the chair is the one that reaches out to him about and giving him a heads up that the committee
okay.
or commission is going to be bringing that forward. That's typically how you did it, right? Pete?
Yeah, that's what we've done in the past with language.
Okay. Sorry, Chuck.
yeah, I'm good with that. I'd be happy to do the presentation at the council meeting, or a presentation. I think maybe the chair should make a presentation and then that'd be complimented.
It's not really a presentation, it's more of a statement, right?
Yeah, it's
About
not
what it
long.
is, and yeah, it's a very simple.
Yeah, you have to read it, you have to read it there, or is it just?
I don't think you have to read it, no. It's presented in their packet. You summarize what it is and why it's important to the town,
Yeah,
and
and
why the
take,
council should pass
and
it.
take questions.
Yes.
Okay,
Who will
So,
help us
now
figure
how?
out,
sorry?
I think will John or who will help us figure out what the town council members need
Yeah,
to be able to approve this?
yeah. So if you want, Randy, if you want to, I can try working on the draft resolution sooner rather than later and pull together just some language that you can include maybe in an email
Okay.
to him. And you can, just to give him a heads up ahead of the December meeting, so if he can either provide feedback before that meeting or plan to attend that meeting.
Okay.
And weigh in so that we have some guidance from him.
Okay, great.
And he's been responsive in the past when I've
Nice.
called or emailed, so I don't think that'll be an issue at all. And we're of course assuming that the council.
Well,
Oh, one statistic I think would be really important for the presentation, and it'll probably change a little bit more by the time we get there, is how many Maine communities are supporting this
right.
by the time
By the time.
we're presenting this to council.
Well, one thing is,
We have a sense of how many there are right now.
uh,
There's 144 coastal municipalities, but I
Right.
don't know how many.
no, it's a slow process to get towns online. You know, we're getting more and more organizations online, but as with us, it's a slow process. But if I can go to, for instance, the people who stepped up and are open to this pitch from the Maine Association of Conservation Commissions, with whom we met in Brunswick. If I can go to them with the news that this Conservation Commission is taking it to their town council and the others that are doing so, it could be quite an uptick. in
Does the
that- in
MMA
that
support
number.
it?
No,
Municipal authority?
they do not.
They do not.
They do not. And their specific reason is they're afraid of litigation. That's an issue, I know.
Yeah, because that would be a great vehicle to be able to get a lot of support.
Right.
It's
Right.
a shame.
Well, I've made an appeal to the Hickley and GPCOG that organized the event that Jamie and I attended. And I sent an email to the woman who was running that event, and I haven't heard back yet. I'm going to follow up on that. So that if we could get that group. Oh, and also the Southern Maine Conservation Commission Collaborative is in support of it.
Okay, that's good too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're reaching out to all the land trusts.
I saw your email.
Yeah.
Okay,
Kind of late to get it, but other pitches have already been made to other land
and
trusts.
just as an update, it has been brought to Friends of Scarborough Marsh.
Good.
Probably something that they will support, but they want to see finalized language before they support it.
Okay.
So they won't, and we have our December meeting in early December.
Okay,
So we can come up with draft language that would go to town council.
that
They
will
would
receive
wanna
the
see
town
that
council. Yeah,
to vote on for our meeting before there's support from Friends of Scarborough Marsh. in
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So I don't want to speak to the entire board, but there's been it hasn't been voted on, but there's a positive, brain fog,
reaction.
positive reaction from the initial Camden resolution.
You're on that board. Awesome.
So,
Do we have anything else on PTA that we need to
do
talk
we,
about?
and have we covered the issue of how does this move forward?
I think we have, I mean, the language gets crafted, we circulate it with John.
Yep.
For some feedback. And then it goes to town council in December,
Probably January.
in January, sorry.
Summer.
We'll finalize it in December for our January.
Yeah, we'll shoot that it goes, we'll try to get on a January council agenda.
Yep.
It'd be nice if they took up this and PMAC consolidation at the same meeting, so
Oh.
that we're kind of
Yeah,
not needing to attend to town council meetings.
no reason that couldn't happen.
Efficiency would be great.
Right. It's a matter of where they have room on their agendas. Council agendas tend to be very full lately.
Well, they can prove out two things and it won't take but a minute. It's up to them.
Do we want to, I'm sorry, do we have any more discussion on this topic?
Any questions or comments, Emily?
Nope, Perfect.
Thank you, Chuck.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
Chuck for bringing that to us.
Well,
Does it make sense to jump to, since you brought it up, Janie, Conservation Commission, PMAC, and then go back to coastal resilience?
Yeah.
Okay. I know we have a meeting next week.
We do have a meeting next week. So I think I touched on this briefly when we met briefly on the 25th, that Pete and I met with the two co-chairs from PMAC and Todd Souza, who is Scarborough's Community Services Director and the staff liaison to the PMAC, just to have some initial conversations. And PMAC was interested in consolidating. They shared that their biggest concern was just like diluting the mission of the PMAC. And the mission of the PMAC really is to oversee the implementation of the town's organic pest management policy. And I think that once we had some conversation, they realized that the folks sitting around the table at Conservation Commission really supported that policy, would love to see a more far-reaching policy or really an ordinance in place, but recognize that that's probably not going to happen in the foreseeable future, but maybe something to work towards at some point. So I think, and then the other questions that they had is just like, how do we make this work? And I did have a meeting this morning with Tody Justice, the town clerk, who kind of oversees all the committees, and Todd Souza, just to talk about different ideas that we have. I had mentioned when we met on the 25th that I was going to look into adding alternates to Conservation Commission, and Tody said that it is within the Scarborough Town Charter that committees will have alternates.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
we can add alternates to Conservation Commission, which I think
non-voting oath.
they will have voting authority if a quorum is not
Oh,
made
well, that's
of
great.
regular members.
That's a big difference.
So I think that will help immensely in addition to our remote meeting policy.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we have a meeting scheduled next week with Randy and Pete and myself and the two co-chairs from PMAC plus Todd Souza to talk about moving things forward. And the hope is to have some sort of agreement of that group that we can bring back to our respective committees and hopefully have a vote at our December meeting for moving forward. And so I don't know how detailed you want me to get it, but before anyone wants to jump in and
Well, I can jump in for a second.
Yeah.
I remember one of the questions I brought up is, did the PMAC, the current PMAC members, like, did they have interest in Conservation Commission issues? Or do they just want to do PMAC? Because that seems one of the big thing. And it sounded like they were interested in a lot of the things that our charter says we do, the projects that we're.
oh, good.
So that was really positive, I thought.
Yeah.
The only thing still is to figure out a head count that works for this group.
And I did have a recommendation for that, or proposed to Todd and Tody, and that we would broach with everyone. So with Rachel's vacancy, we have one opening here. And then if we add 2 alternates,
So
that gives us 3 openings. So the thought was that both PMAC and Conservation Commission would choose 1 member to become alternates. And then 2 members of PMAC will become full members of Conservation Commission.
2 members.
2 members and plus the third as an
An
alternate.
alternate. And 1 alternate from the existing Conservation Commission.
1 member of the Conservation Commission will become an alternate.
what does that mean?
That means they still attend the meetings and participate, but when it comes to a vote, and I've seen it done multiple ways, like in other groups where there's alternates, in the more kind of advisory, more loose groups, like they still vote.
So
In
that would give us
others,
9.
so it would give us 9, so
Okay,
7
good.
members and 2 alternates. I know like on planning board, if there's an alternate, the alternates only vote if there's not a quorum. And so the group can decide how
Okay,
that would work.
Okay.
But they still have input, you can still consider their input in decision-making and things like that.
and that's something we'll probably discuss next week also.
Yep.
A little bit further, but that initially to me sounds like a logical way of doing it. I didn't know how many PMAC members wanted to undergo the actual transition, and actually participate
Yeah.
actively in our.
There are only 3 like very active members of PMAC currently, so it would work to bring those 3 over as 2 members and an alternate.
And then how would we go about selecting our alternate?
I would say like a self-nomination if someone is willing to do that, or there can be a discussion. I mean, Susan has had a hard time coming to meetings recently, so maybe she is designated as the alternate since she has not been able to attend meetings on a regular
And she's
basis.
been our liaison to PMAC
PMAC, oh, okay,
for a number of years now.
okay. Well, and it worked, right? Now,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
her role worked to
Yeah.
bring them on.
So we don't
eventually.
need a liaison to PMAC anymore.
Right.
If PMAC is getting alcohol absorbed, I don't know.
Right.
Combined.
Yeah.
With Conservation Commission. So the one interesting thing that we would be losing if, for instance, Susan decided to become alternate or was nominated and accepted it, is she has been working with that group for a number of years. So there's some experience and rapport, I guess is the right word, there that, I mean, I know Terry and I know Todd, but I don't know their inner workings.
Who else are among the 3?
Marla Zando and Rita Britton.
And Terry.
And Rita was on Conservation Commission.
And
in the
Terry
past.
Eddy?
And Terry Eddy, yeah, sorry.
Rita was on Conservation.
That's what Tody had said, and I'm believing
Not during
Tody.
my time.
Must have been a
Okay.
long time ago.
Yeah, it would have been before me.
Well, those are strong people,
Yeah,
strong advocates.
Yeah,
Yep, so
maybe
Rita
that's
and
right.
Marla are the co-chairs. And Terry Eddy is a member who was instrumental in getting the policy
founder.
passed. Yeah,
may I ask a side question? I didn't pay attention. What happened to the question on the turf?
it passed.
So the meetings will change. I mean, it's going to be a bigger agenda.
At times, there might not be action items for PMAC per se every month.
So PMAC right now is meeting every other month. And they're taking on more of kind of an education role and trying to get information out to the community about organic land care practices. In the winter and spring is when they will typically review kind of the town's land care contracts, specifically if they need to request a waiver from the policy to apply pesticides. That has been happening essentially every other year to deal with grubs on the playing fields. And ultimately the decision on whether or not to grant the waiver resides with Tom Hall. But the PMAC serves as an advisory body to make the recommendation of whether or not to grant the waiver.
Well, I've had a long-standing issue with the fact that only town property is affected by
27 acres.
policy.
Out of
Right.
40, wait, how many thousand acres? I just calculated. I forget,
So it's
43 square miles or something like that.
so is PMAC going to be allowed to pursue townwide policy?
PMAC
is
has
that
never
something that's
pursued
revoked?
townwide policy. They were put in place specifically to oversee the implementation of
Right.
the town-specific
But they
policy.
all
If it-
want it and they know they can't pursue it, so they don't.
Well, it could be pursued outside of PMAC. They could form another citizens group and
I see.
build support, but it can't be done under the umbrella of the PMAC
Okay,
because it's not within their purview to do that.
I have an interesting stat to support that. So the town is 30,470 acres. 27 is what this applies to, which is 27,
3,407.
30,407. So this applies to 0.08% of Scarborough. That's useless. So what are you suggesting we absorb PMAC as a project?
yeah.
Well, and
I mean, it can be gradual somehow, but it needs to move forward. It's
and the thing is, I think that because the issue is contentious, we're at this point, the council won't support it unless they know that a large swath of residents will support it.
But you don't even know what they're not gonna support, you know, it needs to be
Well, that's why they're
developed.
trying to focus on education.
It needs to
And
be
they need
developed.
that's why I think there's a unique opportunity between Conservation Commission, PMAC coming in together, working with some other organizations like the Land Trust, Awesome, and their outreach networks.
Right.
And Citizens for Greener Scarborough and those networks in terms of educational programs. I don't know, we have to follow models about how these changes have been made elsewhere. And it's been a grassroots effort, not a top-down just
Right.
asked, because that's the way it's gonna happen in Scarborough. Unfortunately, it's not gonna happen top-down.
I mean, the vested, you know, one of the biggest vested interest in in PMAC is the landscapers who do the work, you know?
Well, they haven't come to meetings in a while because there's been no intentions.
Right, but they're, yeah. And,
But there are a couple more and more organic treaters that I see in my neighborhood, with the majority, 75% is still spray and burn everything inside.
and it's so clear, the evidence is so clear that that policy is just totally outrageously unsustainable, right?
Well, it might help protect some kids playing on some fields, but that's all it does.
That's a tiny percentage you
It
get.
doesn't protect the environment.
Right.
How's that?
Right.
So is this something we could tackle? Because this is really why I joined the Conservation Commission, was to tackle this issue
Yeah.
right here. Is this something that we can tackle once we bring PMAC on? I know it's not in PMAC's, within their purview specifically, but once they're with us, then can we move forward and try to push this from a grassroots place? Would this commission be interested in doing that? Is that within our purview?
We can push.
I think it would be within our purview. I'd like to see us tie as much of our work to the comprehensive plan as possible.
Yeah.
And there's ways that we can tie this to what exists in there as the intentions, as the priorities.
Agreed.
I agree, Randy. I think that's a great way of doing it. I don't remember if we put anything specifically in there about pesticides and their uses on a townwide basis. We talk marsh.
Right.
No, but
But
I mean, the reason you don't want pesticides is all in here. You know, protection
Oh,
of natural
yeah,
resources. you
right,
know,
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying there's a dichotomy between what we put in our comprehensive
Healthy
plan.
watersheds, et cetera, yeah,
Right, and our practices,
Yeah.
including buffers and
yeah.
pesticides and all that, so.
And
It makes me very comfortable that you, the new chair, Pete always was too, are so tuned into that comp plan, because that is the best avenue to go.
And I think these conversations it'll be important to have our town council liaison with
Yeah.
Yeah.
conversations, because, like I said, they're going to be the ones that ultimately give it, the
Yeah.
thumbs up or the thumbs down, and so,
It certainly is in our purview, though. I mean,
Okay.
Conservation Commission's primary responsibility is to increase awareness of work to identify and reduce potential damage to these natural
Yeah,
resources.
right there.
Right there.
Work proactively with staff, to encourage sustainable stewardship of these resources. So it is in our purview to tackle that issue, but we definitely need support, or we need to work with other organizations to develop grassroots support that then makes its way to the town council through an effort.
And honestly, I think that the best approach that will be most successful for this group would be for groups to go to the town council and say that they want the town to be looking at this and addressing it, and the town council to refer it down to Conservation Commission. I think
Good idea.
it's with an issue like this, it's hard for us to be the drivers
Oh, okay.
on it.
Right.
Since we're supposed to be kind of taking direction from the town council. It doesn't always happen like that, but that's kind of like, at least that's how it's been explained to me, is that we are advisors to the town council and take direction from the town council.
Okay.
I do have one thought, which we discussed back in our October meeting, I think it was. No, our August meeting, I think it was, which relates to our next topic on our agenda, which is the Coastal Resilience Project. Remember, we talked about that conceptual overlay?
Mhm.
That may be a way that we can float this idea through Conservation Commission, PMAC, and resilience tied to the comprehensive plan in terms of creating resilience for our natural resources, and tie the ordinance potentially to these overlays. In other words, your X feet from the marsh or tributary, you don't use those. This could be it doesn't have to be a complete townwide ban. It could be a gradual approach to dealing away with, or not dealing away, but converting people's thoughts about this issue.
And so one thing to consider with that too is how do we enforce that? Because enforcement is,
Enforcement right now, I mean, there's a lot of issues you can say, how do we enforce that? But we still have the laws in the books.
Yeah.
Um,
but that's what a lot of people will point to as a reason not to do it, because there are already laws on the books that aren't being enforced. So why are we adding more that will not be enforced?
I know, but you can say that about any law.
I know.
Really.
I have
I
been
agree with
involved
you,
in
Jamie.
lawn care stuff for a really long time. So
Oh.
it's just like, those are the arguments that people are going to come up with. So we just need to be prepared.
Yeah.
I agree.
how to address them.
There are a lot of counterpoints to it. I don't want to get an argument about it, but I 100% agree with you. I think that's why I'm thinking tying it to, well, I mean, for instance, shoreline zoning or setbacks are specific things. Resource protection districts. You're not supposed to cut trees. We don't know if people are cutting trees or not.
Mhm.
We're not going to do away with shoreline zoning because of that. So I think there are a lot of examples we can fill a bit back
Yeah.
and say these are really good regulations that we have in place because they do help protect the environment, and the majority of people
We'll follow.
follow these things because we're generally a law-abiding society.
Mhm.
So anyway,
And there are other towns that have this in place,
other
right?
kinds of
So-
banned.
Yeah, Portland
Yeah.
and South Portland.
Yeah.
Both have.
So we
Any
could
others?
Somebody on the
involve,
Midcoast.
find out.
Belfast?
Camden.
Camden.
Yeah.
Camden's having their own battles though about their dam right now. Yeah, downtown. I think they've got their first time.
Oh, the one that feeds the harbor?
Yeah.
With fresh water?
That we're moving there. We're all right, 6:53, and we still have two issues to stay up on our, although it looks like we're not gonna have too many updates from town council.
Nope.
Um,
We can just do a brief update on coastal resilience. Pete, since you're on the working group for that, so I don't know if you want to start in.
I mean, I can begin from the standpoint of, we had a meeting last week,
The 27th, 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, on kind of a lot of information was provided to the steering committee, I guess it was, on a variety of different issues, including sea level rise and storms and economic impact. What else? There's so much stuff.
There was a lot. It was mostly just like a very
Informational session.
intense overview of where you can go for information.
Wow.
For if you want to, while that they're going to be looking at as they pull together the coastal resilience plan, and encouraging local folks to look over that information too, in order to, I think, be thinking about how it will apply in their communities. I can send out the materials that had the links to the many
Presentation.
online resources
Oh
that
my
were
gosh.
referenced.
Okay.
But lots of like
But no one
map,
say they don't know.
right, exactly. Lots of mapping resources, and looking at different like sea level rise scenarios and inundation and what infrastructure might be impacted and things like that. It was a whole host of different.
Yeah, then how do you protect your natural environment? There were some examples for that. So it was very, very good, but it was so much information.
And it was all online, and it was like 2.5 or 3 hours of just going through rapid fire, all of these
I couldn't
different.
keep up with it
It
all.
was very, it was like my head was spinning by
I was
the end of it.
surprised when they told me I had 10 minutes to cover one topic and 4 minutes to cover another.
You did a great job though.
Oh, thank you.
You did living shorelines
Nice.
for coastal bluffs
Yeah.
and sea level rise scenarios, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
The latest on sea level. So, but it was a lot of it was a lot of information for me as a scientist to take in.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of information.
It was good. It was all very interesting, but it was a lot. As part of that project, so remember, this is the project that Abby Sherwin from Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission came and spoke to us about in August. She did send a fact sheet about the project that I included in the agenda packet. And just so you know, when the agenda goes out now, I don't know if everyone's like scrolling all the way through, but there's going to be a ton of information. Now that we're doing all hybrid meetings, all of that material needs to be posted ahead of time online. So everything will just be in with the agenda. So the fact sheet is in there, and she did share as part of the follow-up from the 27th workshop that the website that she had mentioned when she was here is up and running and live, and I'll have a link to that with the minutes from this meeting, so you guys can check it out.
Yeah, there's like a PDF of all the presentations
Wow.
and
Yeah.
a recording of the actual webinar. So,
Yeah. And they also sent around or included a sheet with all of the links that were referenced in the presentations,
Yeah.
and I'll send that as part of the minutes also, so that you guys have all of those links if you want to check them out, so you don't have to look at individual presentations to see them. So that they'll all be together in that one item. So they are, let's see, Abby sent me an update also, but it was back in September, so I'm sure that there's more that she could add to it at this point. But I'll just share what she shared with me back then, that the stakeholder survey and interview data has been summarized. They've started their assessment work, looking at the coastal hazards. Socioeconomic data is starting to be compiled, and the RFP for coastal hazard assessment work is being drafted. And I shared that the website and the fact sheet are live and available.
Yeah.
And then I think, are they planning the tour for the of example coastal hazards for
Talk
the,
of that, I haven't heard anything since
it
then.
sounded like they were hoping to try to do something this fall with the steering committee. But like you said, I haven't
Yeah,
heard
I haven't heard anything either.
if that's happening. This
The-
week would have been a
yeah.
lovely week for it,
I
since it's
would've- the only
in
other
a
thing
king
was
tide
the
event today.
economic assessment part
Tonight?
is starting.
No,
the past 4 days have been astronomical high tides.
Yeah.
Yep.
King tides, yeah.
Chuck, I wonder if the coastal hazard concerns survey results might bolster your presentation on the pine tree amendment resolution. Just kind of to say,
This is what we're in for.
well over 85% of people are concerned about these things, which relates to why this amendment is so critical. It kind of says people really care and they're extremely concerned.
Sure, definitely.
So that is the quick update on the coastal resilience project. You guys don't have any questions or anything, we can move
Thank you
on.
for sitting through all that.
It was super interesting, but like, yeah, it was a very long,
It was fast. It was just like,
Wow.
yeah, it was very long, very fast, and a whole lot of information that was like, I needed a nap afterwards.
Yeah.
And just update on small farm sustainability. So this again was the issue that Emily brought forward. And it sounds like, Emily, your individual issue has been resolved, correct?
My individual issue is workable at this point. There's a larger issue, which was what I brought to this group always, outside of my own individual issue, which has not been resolved. And I think it's just on hold right now, pending the election and all the things. If you know more information, I would love it, but that's as much information as I have.
I don't have a whole lot more information other than last I heard staff was going to be working on some small language changes that should make it more clear that these special exemptions shouldn't necessarily be considered special. They're allowable as long as the criteria are met.
Does question 3 have any bearing on how this might play out?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay, is that
The right to food.
the right to food?
I mean, this was specifically the ability to sell from your land, and right to food, I think, is to grow to sustain yourself. So I think that
It actually does, though, Pete. It does. Having the question 3 pass, actually, it makes this stronger so that you can have a farm. You can grow your own food, regardless of whether you sell or not. And so there is a selling component here, but there was also a farm component. If you have a farm, you're typically selling. So, but growing your own food to support your family and having a homestead was another piece to this. And so 3 absolutely strengthens this.
Okay.
We still need the ordinance, but I think it makes the ordinance request even stronger.
Yeah, I forget how much that passed by, but it was pretty overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there were-
overwhelming. Yeah.
60% or something like that.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, this shouldn't be a big deal, but we should make sure, and that, I will take that to make sure that this goes on through. I think it just, it over the last 2 months, we haven't pushed it, and I need to get back in there and push it. And I know that town council is going to push it, but they were in the middle of an election and all the things, right? So I would like to get this passed in the next few months.
Great. So I know Councilor Clucci's not here, but I can share that the large scale solar ordinance was approved at the town council's October 20th meeting.
Oh, cool.
So we will now allow commercial solar farms in Scarborough on parcels of 25 acres or more in the rural farming and manufactured housing, industrial and light industrial zones in Scarborough. So the majority of that is west of Route 1. There are a couple eligible parcels east of Route 1. And I know that the planning board will begin their reviews of those starting at their next meeting. There were, I think, 3 or 4 projects that were submitted to the planning board for their next meeting. So
And that was the work of the sustainability committee, right?
that was the work of the
Yeah,
sustainability
fantastic.
committee. Yep.
Great.
So it took us a while, but we got there, and I think that the product is good. We are making the solar developers a little nervous because there's a statewide moratorium on solar development starting at the end of this year, a temporary pause, just to kind of review and make corrections if needed. And so part of the that pause stated that as long as you had all of your permitting in place, including local permits, your project could continue after the 31st. So they're right up against it to get their local approvals.
How long is that pause to be in place?
It
Undetermined,
undetermined.
but it's not a year-long pause.
It could be more than a year.
Jeez.
Why
Why would it take so long to do the system? I mean, did you
because
get
I
stuff on the ground.
right, but I think it might require some legislation to just make sure, or some rulemaking to make sure that I think part of it is that a lot of land was being, I mean, papers quoted land grabs, saying land grabs were happening for solar development. Personally, I would rather see a land grab for solar development than a subdivision, but that's just my own personal opinion.
So developers were opposed to it.
I think that there was just a lot of so part of it is the land use. Part of it is the issue with CMP's grid, and their grid can't necessarily handle the local generation or the solar generation.
I see it so anti-solar. I don't even want, I'll strike that from the meeting.
So
In a year, it won't be
I mean,
any grid anymore.
the EcoMaine has a project in development in Scarborough that received local approval because under a municipal use back in February, and the town council had approved entering into an agreement with the developer to purchase solar credits on that. And we've since that approval happened, the developer has come back and said the credits are probably going to go up because we have to do X, Y, and Z for CMP in order to connect with their grid. So, it's a whole host of things, and it's pretty complex, and that's why I think they just need to put a pause, take a step back, and look at, you know, how development is happening and make sure that it's happening where it should and in a manner that it should, and to make sure that, you know, our existing electrical grid can accept this power without too many issues.
You would think the CMP, who just got crushed in that referendum and is going to have another referendum to take away their very existence, would want to be very compliant with the public's wishes, you know?
I don't pretend to understand how CMP operates and what their priorities are.
Huh?
No comment.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's good news.
And then an item about the sustainability committee, their next initiative is looking at the town's parking standards to require new parking areas in both commercial and residential areas be designed with consideration for EV charging stations.
That's great.
Can I ask a question on that?
You can.
Multiple types of EV, right? Not just Tesla.
Right.
What about making those parking lots out of the material that actually absorbs water?
Ooh, right.
So, yeah, porous pavement. So yes, porous pavement is great in the proper application, and we are finding that in some of our streams in Scarborough, the issue with the water quality is actually levels of salt. And the issue, sometimes we don't necessarily want to infiltrate the stormwater if it's salt laden, because then we get chronic spikes in our conductivity and salt levels, chloride levels, and in our streams. It's affecting the stream life and bringing our water quality levels down. So
But wouldn't a direct inflow of salt do the same thing? If it's not porous?
no, because what's happening is if we infiltrate it, it's getting into the groundwater, and then in our low flow.
So it's not cheap flow going in.
Right, so sheet flow, it's a quick injection and then it flows through the system. Infiltration, it gets into the groundwater, and then in low flow scenarios, the groundwater is feeding the streams with salt laden water, and that's creating the issue for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
So there was lots of conversations early on. I remember when the Downs was coming in and talking about the stormwater BMPs that they were using on site, and DEP, because of the water quality of the streams that in the watershed where that development is happening, DEP was saying that they didn't necessarily want infiltration BMPs there because of the salt levels, fluoride levels in the two streams there. So unfortunately, like porous pavement is really, it's a really good technique, but it's not a one size fits all. And so I will share in terms of low impact development and development mimicking the natural environment as much as possible. The town will be subject to a new stormwater permit starting in July 2022. And one of the requirements of that permit is to increase the use of low impact development techniques as much as possible. And so Scarborough and the 29 other towns around the state that are subject to that permit will be working on ordinance language.
That's for.
Yeah, to increase the use of techniques like porous pavement to address
Clean
stormwater.
infrastructure, stuff like that.
Yep.
Okay, because I think that's a side topic. But,
Yep.
I mean, the green infrastructure approach through that nature-based solutions could be used.
Yep. So
Okay.
it'll probably be looking at a combination of green and gray infrastructure and how they work best in concert, and not putting in 8 million stormwater ponds anymore. So
Yep.
trying to deal with stormwater in a more natural way.
Great.
And we are also doing some part of the education and outreach related to that, that permit is dealing with winter operation and maintenance. So looking at people sanding and salting practices and trying to get them to reduce winter salt.
And that's the salt you're referring to.
That is the salt I'm referring to, is winter salt.
Can I ask one completely different question, but related to restoration?
Yes,
Is that project off of Payne Road, was Payne Road
it is Payne Road.
ever happened with the restoration of that branch of the Nonsuch?
No, it's Phillips Brook.
Phillipsbrook.
Yep. So that project just went back out to bid. So we put it out to bid in the spring and the bids came back almost twice what we had budgeted for. Part of it is so we were supposed to get it out to bid in the spring of 2020, and then COVID happened. Public Works has a large piece of that project. Their staffing was reduced by half during that time, so they weren't going to be able to get to the project. So we had to postpone it to this year. We got it out to bid this year. The bids came back way high. And so we reworked the RFP. It was just released on Friday to put it back out to bid and hope that we can do that stream restoration work in the summer of 2022.
Thank you.
So it's a diminished project.
What do you mean? It's
You reworked it.
Well, we reworked it. We didn't change the scope at all. We just restructured the RFP so that we would have more flexibility when the bids come in to decide, are we just going to have the contractor do this one piece or do we want to fold it all in? We're just looking at different options for getting the full project done, giving us more flexibility to get it done. All good questions.
Yeah.
Thanks for that update. I'm really hoping that gets underway.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tricky site for newer folks. It's the old Public Works laydown yard on Payne Road, kind of just before Payne Road intersects with Route 1, behind like On the Vine, and there's that antique shop and stuff. It's just a big open area. Public Works used to use it to stockpile material. They've since stopped that because we are working on a stream restoration in that area.
Oh, okay.
There's
So-
actual brook trout habitat there.
Wow.
Yep. So looking at, there's a ton of invasives in there that were
Lots of knotweed.
tons of knotweed. So the plan is to do in-stream restoration using log sills and root wads to try to create habitat and protect the bank and direct the energy within the stream more towards the center and instead of towards the sides where it's directed now, and it just erodes the stream channel. And then grade back the stream bank so the stream can reconnect with the floodplain. So when it does flood, it will flood up into the floodplain instead of just cutting down in the channel. And so it'll be a big, we need a specialty contractor essentially to get into the stream and do the work that's required in the stream. Public Works is doing some of the grading. And then there's a large planting that either a contractor or a landscaper will do. And so we in the first release of the for the request for bids for that project, we discovered that there were some issues with the plans that made the prices come back higher than they should have. And a lot of it was related to the size of the plant stock that was recommended. So the issue was that they put in like the mature plant sizes as opposed to the sizes that they actually wanted planted in there. And that like blew up the cost, the price.
10-inch diameter tree.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was like 15-foot long live willow stakes, and they're usually like 2 to 3 feet.
Oh,
And so they're like 15 feet long. That's going to be like $15 a stake. So we were expecting the price to come back at $2 to $3 per willow stake, and they were $15
oh, gee.
per stake. So that was 70 grand right there. That,
Oh my God.
but then, I mean, the price of everything has gone up since we initiated that project back in 2019. So it's just,
Yeah.
it's a challenge. We'll see what we can do.
All right, well, good years, still moving along.
So next meeting agenda, we'll have the pine tree amendment. That'll probably be an action item on the language and the memo. Does that sound correct to everyone?
Yeah, it sounds like a great plan.
And then another action item will be the consolidation with PMAC.
We'll have a meeting between now and then,
Mhm.
no more.
And who has the authority to consolidate that?
It'll go to the council as well. So
Okay.
it'll be a recommendation.
In
Will,
January. Yeah.
yep, it'll be a recommendation. I've already kind of started looking at revising Conservation Commission's charge and the pest management policy. Both
Okay.
of those will have to go to council for approval. And so I'm gonna send the drafts. I've sent them to Todd to look at, and you guys will get the drafts before the meeting next week to
Okay.
take a look at. We'll provide that. And then once you guys kind of weigh in, I'll rework them if needed, and it'll be part of the meeting packet for our December meeting.
Okay. Do we want to invite PMAC members as guests to the meeting? I mean, anybody's welcome, but
Right. Yeah, we certainly can extend that invitation if they want to participate. I mean, it's
Yeah.
easier now too, since we're
Right.
we're hybrid. If they want to just zoom in and join us, they can.
Watch everybody comes out of the woodwork.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right. Are there any other items that, oh, and you guys wanted to include,
Report on the Conservation Commission conference.
Yes, and the ICLEI update, a quick update from the ICLEI.
Right.
GP5 thing that you guys have.
I think the thing that's particularly relevant, well, there's a whole bunch of elements from that, but one thing that I'm not sure is our role, but I think we should play a role in it is coming up with a plan for climate change emissions inventory and coming up with a climate action plan for the town. It's been on our agenda a while back.
yeah.
We just got other things,
Mhm.
but
I think it would be
I think that
interesting.
can wait.
Interesting to do a greenhouse gas inventory for Scarborough, and just starting with our municipal operations. I mean, a true greenhouse gas inventory looks at the entire community, and you have to make some assumptions and things like
Right.
that for some sectors, like, you know, what are people using to heat their homes on a regular basis, and what is their annual
Right.
electricity usage and things like that. But yeah, I think that is.
They seem to be
good.
confident in their assemblage of assumptions though.
Right.
You know, like that they're pretty useful.
Yeah, South Portland is that, so is Portland.
Yeah, so I don't think it needs to.
Yeah, South
Take years of
Portland, I think they
measuring.
actually both have
Oh.
annual electricity or energy reporting requirements for all commercial buildings. I don't know what their compliance rate is like, but they are asking all commercial buildings to report on their annual energy usage.
Speaking of plan, maybe we can, if there's, it sounds like there's just a couple of bigger items for next month. And since it's gonna be December, we take a little chunk of the meeting to talk about what we want our, just like a discussion, what we want our goals for next year to be.
That'd be good.
comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I mean, we had that discussion, back in
Yep.
June,
Look at, okay,
May,
Um,
June, about what our goals should be, and then we kind of got sidetracked with all kinds of stuff over the summer.
And COVID,
Yeah.
Maybe it was even longer than that.
yeah, I think it was.
Do we want to have that at our December meeting or wait until January when we may have new members?
right.
That might
yeah.
make sense because
Yeah.
of the consolidation feedback, and also we may have some really interesting stuff coming out from coastal resilience.
We could do some
Project.
prep work for it, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, let's
Prep work
earmark
that
some-
would like take into account what's happened in the past, what we can pull up and anything new. So maybe early discussion, not goal setting, but
Yeah.
early discussion.
Because when we had the discussion, but we talked about the flood resilience checklist and recommendations from the checklist and all that stuff, remember, as to what we want to follow up on as a commission. So yeah, but it's a good time to renew some thoughts and see what we have to continue to follow up on. I mean, if we get the PTA thing done, the small farm sustainability done, and the consolidation done, there's three
Yeah.
big things.
Mhm.
That will be nice, tangible results.
Yep.
I would love to do an analysis of our existing buffers and setbacks from the marsh and its tributaries and find out how inadequate
Hmm.
they are. I don't mean it that way. I don't know how to say it. But if we want to strategize about how to implement some of the things, the comprehensive plan, protection of the marsh, tributary watershed, all that stuff, we kind of need to know what is wrong, or what we've done wrong, and where the protections aren't adequate,
Hmm.
and go from there. I don't know if that's a town GIS exercise to start that or what, but we might be able to figure that out more with the coastal resilience project / other stuff, but
Yeah,
there's a lot there I think we could dig into.
I'm just thinking like buffers and setbacks too are going to be so important for our coastal resilience
Yeah.
discussion that it's so interrelated to everything. that's going on.
Yeah, so maybe will be part of a work plan for the upcoming year if we want to work with the town and other committees and commissions in the town to implement anything that comes out of the coastal resilience project. I know the land trust is working pretty hard to try to pinpoint parcels in town that would benefit the marsh and its tributaries from a buffering capacity standpoint. So they're no longer just interested if it, provides public access, is important and all that, but parcels that actually buffer the tributaries of the marsh from impacts from adjoining development.
Do you know, are they working with the land board? Scarborough Land Board?
I'm sorry, what?
We have a Scarborough Land Board, right? Oh, what do I call it?
Land trust.
No, Parks and Conservation Land Board. Noah's on that.
Yeah, that's usually looking at making recommendations for parcels to put into conservation. I don't know that they're necessarily looking at buffering.
Okay,
Well, that could be a byproduct of it.
Right,
Anyway, I think the more, and this again gets right back to our comprehensive plan and the thoughts in it, that look about protecting our resources, protecting the marsh. To do so, we actually have to set aside land adjacent to it. So, not just, a 25-foot buffer that you can put a lawn up, well, maybe it's a 25-foot vegetated buffer with a setback or whatever, like you and I were having that
Yeah.
discussion. Probably is inadequate to actually protect the tributaries from stuff getting in.
yeah, and I mean, I was involved I did so much stream work in my past life, and you were asking that question, and I was like, oh, we've got stream protection zones, but then like you had made the case, like, I'm talking about buffers and not setbacks. It's like, yeah, our stream protection zone is just like a 200-foot setback, but it doesn't say that that
You
two
can
hundred,
mow up the edge.
right, that 200 feet doesn't need to be
Yeah.
vegetated and.
What got me thinking about that was I was walking, not here down in Wells, I was walking the beach down in Wells, and there's a green lawn at the edge of people's seawalls.
Mhm.
And I'm like, it's just not a natural habitat
Right.
for, and then I got thinking about streams and marsh buffers. We've been having those same discussions with friends.
Yeah.
At Boston.
Raked seaweed, right? off the-
So I think it'd be really interesting to try to tackle that in a longer term effort. I don't know the commission's role in that, but if we have a purview to protect, work with other organizations and protect
Is that
our
a really,
resources.
really expensive undertaking?
I don't know if it's expensive, but it might take a lot of time because it would require pretty substantive changes to our existing shoreline zoning and other language.
Yep.
I mean, the town has the ability to go over and above state minimums. They used to, at least under the page, we weren't allowed to.
Right.
After they passed that law, that's it. Can't.
Or they tried to, did they,
I
did
don't know if
actually,
they
I don't
did.
think it went
They
through.
didn't go through.
I don't think so. They tried to.
Because a lot of towns, Scarborough included, have protections that go well over and above what minimum state standards. Because we recognize that the state standards just aren't adequate. They might be adequate, minimally adequate. They're not actually progressing issues. They're going to be keeping them at status quo. So I think there's room for improvement there. It'd be a really interesting project to work on. Again, I think it would tie in with the Coastal Resilience Project. I'm really excited about that.
Sounds like a magic. For us.
Yeah, again, I don't know. I'm not quite sure how we do it.
Well, and I think that it's going to start, probably have to start with education.
Yeah.
And kind of explaining why we're making these recommendations or want to see this happen and things like that.
Yeah.
Because especially coastal landowners who have high property values don't like being told what they can and can't do on their property, even if, like, you're doing this to protect your property from future storms and storm surge and things like that. Like, we're very much focused on the here and now and not necessarily what's
Trust me,
going
I
to come
know.
at us. Yeah. So
Anyway, that's an aside.
lots of
Something that
education needed.
we have jotted down as something that.
Does it also make sense to bring forward small farm sustainability for December or wait?
I need to follow up and see where that is. I don't see a lot of movement in December. I think we need to look at that in January. Jamie, do you feel differently?
No, I think, I know, like, there's a lot happening with other things right now, so I don't see staff getting to that in January. Especially since it's something that they're probably not gonna even start thinking about until snow starts melting and people want to start getting their, I mean,
Yeah.
it's gonna be good to keep pushing it, so it's in place for when the snow is melted. But I think they're gonna look at that and be like, oh, we can address that in a couple months. We have these other things that need to be addressed now.
I agree.
It's 7:28. I have one more question for you specifically, Jane,
Oh, good.
and it relates to the coastal resilience
Mhm.
effort. Have you heard anything at the town level about the status of our floodplain maps?
I haven't heard anything. I can check in with Brian.
I heard through the grapevine that they're now being pushed off again.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Is that, I mean,
You talking about the FEMA maps?
Yeah,
Mhm.
Jeez.
they were originally passed in 2006, or issued in 2006, the new maps. Quote unquote.
New.
And guess what year we're in?
Right, not 2006.
I think they pushed off for political reasons.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at the same time, some of the mapping isn't the best, but yes.
Well, it's
Yeah.
because it's based on data from the 80s. I mean, there needs to be
Which
a
is
big
an improvement from the
allocation,
previous
right?
maps,
There needs to
but
be a big allocation of money towards that
And
and
that's the problem.
resources to.
Yeah.
that's the problem. It's all run through contracts. And the lowest bidding contract is through the federal government.
Updated maps.
And they do minimum standards for product. we need to update those standards, but those standards are money to update the standards to do the better modeling. Or the state has to step in, or the community has to step in and do their own.
There's lots of chicken and eggs.
Yeah. So I was just wondering, because
Parts
that
and
has,
pieces.
I think it has a big role, plays a big role in thinking about coastal resilience.
Yep.
You don't know what the elevation is. It's kind of hard
Are
to
the
find.
new maps gonna be shocking for?
They already are
vested
shocking.
interest?
They already are shocking in some locations.
Yeah.
In some locations, they haven't changed much, but in other locations, they are shockingly like 3 feet higher, 4 feet higher.
Yeah.
But then the old maps are developed from data in the 60s and 70s and run using models from the 80s.
You gotta know what's up.
So
And then the sea level rise scenarios are changing on a weekly basis.
and
So,
the state has now adopted sea level rise scenarios that we need to plan for. So. Anyway, okay. All right. I just wondered if you have heard anything.
but like I said, I can check with Brian. All right. Anything else?
Not.
Oh, good meeting.
It's 7:30 on Monday.
Nice. Well done.
Look at that.
Your
Chair.
last meeting was one of your best.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well done, Chair. Any final words?
Motion to adjourn. No, seriously, it's been awesome being chair. I've just been doing it too long. I feel dry, and I like new energy, and Randy's bringing a lot of new energy. You guys, all
Yeah, it's a
you
good
folks, Emily,
group.
Noah, bring a lot of new energy and expertise. And
I'm glad you're not leaving altogether.
Yeah, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
no,
Not
you're
yet.
not allowed. No.
But I probably will at some point.
Won't we all?
Yes,
As long as that point's just a little dot and not like
Yeah.
really big on the horizon.
right.
I'm gonna age out eventually.
But no, it's been a pleasure. I wish we had accomplished more, but we're getting there.
Yeah, thank
We
you.
are getting there.
A long time
I
as
think-
chair.
I think we're well recharged.
2009. 7?
Wow,
9. I don't know, somewhere.
like the flood maps.
Basically.
Yeah. Formed in the 70s. Yeah.
So with that, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Emily.